So one of the main reasons that people don't want to drink ayahuasca is because they're afraid that they will lose control for a couple of hours. And I want to dive deeper into that topic, also share about a time where I lost control in an ayahuasca ceremony, but also how that can actually lead to a quantum leap in your life. We all have a certain viewpoint on this is the way that the world is. But the truth is, we are all hallucinating, even in a state when we are totally sober, because we are projecting our own fears, our insecurities, our unresolved issues, our trauma onto our outer landscape. And also the people, the situations, they are perfect fits, perfect mirrors for our own interpretation of things. So we build that own little bubble, and no wonder so many people are afraid to drink something that might expose or shatter all of that self-created reality. So what we refer to as reality is the reflection of our inner landscape, the thoughts, feelings, beliefs we hold in our conscious and subconscious mind. And in a way, we are tripping on our own traumas. I mean, isn't it crazy that from the infinite possibilities out there in the world, we keep on experiencing the same things over and over again in our work situation, in our romantic relationship, in our friendships, and I'm not even excluding myself from it. So I think as part of that spiritual practice, and it can be with plant medicine, but anything, is to wake up from this amnesia of the dream in a way that we're in and recreating over and over again the same situations. And ask yourself, wouldn't you want to wake up from that amnesia, wake up from those patterns that were installed from you for such a long time and decide like, hey, do I want to keep subscribing to those or create my own paradigm? So are you really in control of your life right now, even in total sobriety? And a lot of times when we try to have that control, what we're doing is we're squeezing life out of life. And many times there is a bigger plan out there for us that we are not aware of, that our ego is not aware of. And we are actually, by trying to control life, even cutting ourselves off life and are standing in our own way from experiencing it, from expanding in the ways that are possible to us. Also in today's age, we glorify the mind. There's a famous quote, I think, therefore I am. And being in the mind the whole time, it gives us that sense of control. But also, in a way, we know that we're not in control, and that leads to a lot of anxiety in our life. And it's a pretty crazy mechanism, if you ask me. And I share all of this to maybe help you try to understand that we are all not as much in control of our own life as we think that we are, and that we are, in a way, also hallucinating and not living in reality, but our own perception or illusion of our own reality. Another example that we're not always in control is when you go to sleep. You're not aware when you go to sleep and you're not conscious, yet you're still breathing, all of the vital organs are functioning, you wake up the next day rested. So it's about trusting and letting go. Also, if you look at nature is perfect. It's so harmonious. Everything is interconnected. Everything gets done. Nothing is in a hurry. Nothing is delayed. So there's a very deep intelligence all around us, which we can also access, especially through extraordinary states of consciousness that you can get to through ayahuasca. I want to share a couple of other situations where people are not consciously aware. And one of those examples is when Harvey Martinez won the Champions League with Bayern Munich in 2013. He says he has no recollection of the match. It's because when he was playing soccer in those 90 minutes, he was so focused and so present to the moment that it wasn't his conscious mind that was active. It was life, energy flowing through him, expressing itself, that he doesn't remember any of it, and he played a magnificent game. Also, there are drummers who do shamanic ceremonies, which are many times not even involving any substances, where they play themselves into the trance. They're not consciously playing, they're not remembering it, they're just like letting it flow through them, and something very deep and profound can come out of that. So let's shift this conversation to ayahuasca, and will you be in control of the experience? And it really depends, and to a degree as well. So let's say your mind starts wandering somewhere, and also the more experience you have with ayahuasca, you can direct it in certain ways as well. But it's also very likely that the ayahuasca just takes you somewhere and you cannot do anything about it. And in that situation, you are forced to sit with those thoughts, feelings, emotions, with the pain, whatever comes up. And the more you resist it, the stronger it becomes, until you are forced to sit with it. And then when you sit with it, that's when the understanding comes, that's when the compassion comes, that's when the forgiveness comes, that's when maybe also the love comes, and the peace that is surrounded around the topic. And I mean, it can be scary, but that helps you wake up from the state of amnesia, the state of autopilot that you're in, because it brings you to that place. It makes it aware. You're encountering it, you're sitting with it, you're understanding it, and then the wisdom, whatever you want to call it, comes from that experience. And then there's the next step, I think, what people are more afraid of, is that they totally lose control in ayahuasca ceremony, that they start hitting around, that they might scream, that they lose their thing. And the next day they'll be fine, so don't worry about that. But of course it can be something very disturbing, and maybe even with no recollection of the experience the next day. And in those situations, it's very important that you're doing it at a safe place where people know how to handle those types of situations for the person who is in the experience, so they don't hurt themselves, but also for the people who are there in the ceremony as well, that they can still go within their own journey and encounter what they need to encounter without just totally being carried away by one person who has that strong of an experience. So it's very important to be with the right people. But in a way, when those situations happen, there was something in that person that was very unaligned, which then becomes an expression, and is able to let it go as well. So it's a very powerful process. It's a very healing process. It's a healing process in a very strange way, but it is healing. And like I said, it's also can be a bit disturbing, but liberating too. And a lot of people, after they experience even that situation, sometimes even the same night, they're like, okay, I want to have another drink of ayahuasca. And just, of course, slow down. But for the people who experience it, it's very healing experience. And I want to share in that sense something that happened to me. It was my second ceremony with ayahuasca, and it was very strong, and I was also like going like this for multiple hours, and I was saying sometimes more loudly, sometimes less, sometimes more quieter, but this is not me. And the next day I was very thinking back about the ceremony, I was just like, what happened here? And I also didn't really get behind it. I mean, there was just a lot of overload, and it took me months, and even more than just months, to understand what really happened in those situations. Is that I disassociated myself from my thoughts, that I just that my thoughts are not me, my negative patterns are not me, they're just things that I'm subscribing to at the moment. And I was able to disassociate from that on an energetic level, and it was so powerful. And I mean, also at that time a bit disturbing, but very healing. And that's what I think is so important, to have that level of trust, just as when you are going to sleep, that you know that you'll be fine, that when you go into those extraordinary states of consciousness, to also deep down know and trust that you will be fine as well. And then there's also other ways of losing control in an ayahuasca ceremony, and it's when the ayahuasca is so strong and pulsating and energetically overwhelming, like you just cannot do anything about it. It just overtakes you, and it can sound scary, but it's actually one of my favorite parts, and it's also something magnificent happening in that moment because it just shifts, aligns something inside of you that needs to be aligned. I feel like it's in a way an open heart surgery on the psyche in those moments. And if you also have heard of Dr. Joe Dispenza, he talks about how in his meditation he's working on becoming nobody, nowhere, and no time, and just like totally in a way becoming one and becoming no one at the same time. And I feel like that is exactly what is happening in those moments where ayahuasca overtakes one and just like it goes to work. And those are exactly then also the moments where the quantum leaps happen. Also, those moments for me are very rare these days, also because when I do ayahuasca, in most cases I'm facilitating and I have to be very aware and concentrated on what is happening on the room, but wanted to share that even that overwhelmness, that realignedness, that's something beautiful that is happening in those situations. So in conclusion, it's important that you trust yourself, that you trust the facilitators, that you trust the process, and that you're drinking medicine and it is going to help you uncover things. It's going to help you to wake up to the unconsciousness that you're living. Also, if you are afraid to lose control, in many cases it's also a sign that you are afraid to lose control in other areas of your life. How we talked earlier, we cannot control life. In our attempt to control life, we're squeezing life out of life. So allow yourself to trust, allow yourself to surrender. Magical things are going to happen in your life, in an ayahuasca ceremony, but most importantly, in your life. With that, if you want to experience ayahuasca in Colombia, shoot me a message. You're more than welcome to join for a retreat. Like this video so more people see it, subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you in the next video.